from here. Thanks for reminding me. Okay, so with that, I start this session. Here are the learning outcomes. What is the connection between coaching and the agile ways of working? How do we coach the whole brain and what benefit it brings in? And before that, I will briefly cover some behavioral aspects of the people, why people behave in certain way, the way they are, right? And then some tips on powerful questioning so that you can unleash the full potential of your team members or whosoever you coach. And then what do you do when people are feeling stuck? What tricks that you can apply as part of your coaching? And how can you coach to foster the right mindset, build the right mindset in the team? Right? Mindset itself is a very big subject. People can talk about it at length, right? For 1 hour, for an entire day, I think. But then from the coaching perspective, there are certain things that you can do to help people build the right mindset. At least give it a very good start from there on. And finally, we'll be talking about it. How do you use the psychological safety correct way? The first thing first, what is the connection between coaching and agile way of working? Both have humanistic focus. Both have, both relies on human-centric approaches. Right? When we talk about the agile way of working, we are essentially talking about 2 weeks iteration to 1 month iteration, within which the cross-functional team is expected to come up with something tangible, right? That they can produce to the customer. But this is a very short duration. Nowadays, 2 week is the most common iteration that we see. Within that, people are supposed to come together, churn out something, and then present it to the business who will give the feedback, who will probably release it potentially, right? So there's a lot of onus on the team. There's a lot of reliance on the human potential, individual capabilities. So apart from the technical skills, domain skills that the people possess, there's a lot of human aspects of them, which relates to their behavior, which relates to their attitude, which relates to their mindset. That has to be looked at. And these are precisely where we expect team to be creative, innovative, collaborative, right? Discover themselves, get better, find their better versions over the period of time. What the person started with the first iteration, we are definitely not expecting him to remain the same, but become better over the period of time as the sprints are going, iterations are moving, PIs are moving, and also understand his behaviors, patterns, and manage themselves better. Right? It is also about being emotionally intelligent at the work, where you are managing your emotion and getting to manage your situation much better way. It's also about developing an attitude of continuous learning and enhancing the skill set, right? The technology is changing at a fast speed. Cloud was a new phenomena a few years back. Now it is not. Then there's a machine learning and artificial intelligence, which is prevailing. And sometime, in the future, you see this IoT and blockchain coming up. People have to develop the attitude to learn and enhance themselves, right? Then they have to develop the listening skills also. Imagine a person is not going to your backlog refinement meeting. The person is not going to, your PI planning meeting or ceremonies, but then he's missing the critical components of the conversation. Then he's lagging behind. He's confused. He's reaching out to his team members, disturbing them probably, or writing the questions because he just missed the critical component. So it's very important that people develop the deeper level listening skills, not only the verbal, but the non-verbal also, which comprehend the entire sense of what is being said. And then they exhibit growth mindset in the terms of how people stay open, flexible, responsible to the situation. They are supposed to feel psychological safe. Psychological safety is very foundational for agile way of working. When we accept people to, um, you know, uh, experiment what they are best made for, right? Leveraging their skill set, and then they are empowered to make the decision, right? They are supposed to make the decision. If they are not empowered, then they're supposed to ask also. So all these things that I'm talking about here, and we will take a deep dive very soon. It's just not about this only. Uh, Coaching can come as a handy tool. If you go as a coach to this team, say, hey team, I know you have certain knowledge about your technical domain and skills, but then behavior part also can be taught to you. You do this and this, it won't work. Because coaching works at a brain level. It really transforms the people. And it comes with its own belief and the uh, uh, benefits that I'm going to briefly cover here. It considers people as a whole, creative and resourceful. What does it mean? It means that people have their own panorama. They have their experiences, knowledge, beliefs, resources, everything. And when they're talking to you, imagine a team member telling to you some story that why he's struggling. You as a coach go to him. You are not looking at his panorama. You cannot look because this guy is just open a window for you. Within that window, you're trying to peep and make out something which you cannot do by advising. What you can do is you can be his thinking partner when you are asking certain questions to him. This guy is going back and connecting the dots in this panorama and finding the answers, right? And that way, coaching helps you to find the patterns, emotional patterns, relational patterns, and the cognitive patterns. Emotional as in, oh, I get angry with this thing. Oh, I become happy with this thing, which you probably may not be knowing. Relational pattern. Oh, I think I can trust this guy. Oh no, this guy cannot be trusted. That kind of patterns. Cognitive pattern. Okay, this makes sensory things, right? This thing makes more sense to me, and that thing doesn't make. These kind of patterns when emerge, then you generate new level of consciousness, new level of awareness that you can use to connect with yourself deep. I remember when the coaching started for me, I was two-person personality. One who was looking at the outside world, another who was inside with his own value, belief, and strengths, weaknesses. They would never match. When the coaching started, I was coached. My outer self has to come and shake the hand with my inner self. And that way it stabilized me. It gave me another level of peace. And the sense of being feeling lonely disappeared. And when that happens, you start becoming kinder to yourself, right? You also get rid of the imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is something that can happen to anybody, right? No matter at what stage you are, your CEOs or leadership or whatever positions are, it's very likely that you may develop this imposter syndrome or feel inferior at any point of time. And there's an interesting story about Neil Armstrong. When he went to the space, in the spaceship, he was feeling very inferior to his other crew members. He was telling to himself, see, these guys are skilled in some another skill set, and they are uh, going for a purpose on the moon. What I'm doing, I'm simply going to go to the moon and come back, where on the earth he was a superhero, right? People need to be positioned to coach, need to be coached to position themselves in the correct situations, circumstances, so that they are okay with what they are okay with their failure, and they become more kinder to themselves. And then the challenges, coaching is also not about listening your stories, it's about challenging you to explore beyond what you can do, right? And it is also about meaningful conversation, because coaches would follow some models, right? Whatever the discussion happens within the purview of that model that they will use, and you won't come to know. But then the whole idea is that that conversation is somewhere structured, which start by generating awareness in you, to asking you to design some actions and see like how are you likely to fulfill that action plan or commitment that you're making, right? Or maybe, and end of the session, you most likely would be ending up with some another insight which is going to be helpful for you. So let's take a deep dive. Here I just try to present as what is the connection between agile way of working and the coaching. It is important to know, I mean, we're talking about the behavior, it is important to know how the behaviors are shaped. And there's a quote by famous a neuroscientist who says, human behavior is an enormously complex set of things and that mixture of underlying things is different for different people. That mixture could be understood by this iceberg model here, right? The words that you use, the tone that you use, the vibes, the body language, the gestures, the expressions, how you react to the situations, all your behavior is actually uh, is the result, is the sum of your beliefs, values, biases, prejudices, experiences, fears, dreams, and feelings, right? And when we really want to change the behavior, we have to really go back to understand what kind of values and beliefs and biases and experience this guy is carrying, right? For that, it is also important to understand how your brain is programming these beliefs. These beliefs, values are actually being programmed by your brain here. And brain is programming it by observing the outside world and processing it in a certain way. It uses its own representational system, right? A human uh, brain mind can have 5 types of representation system: visual, which sees and makes sense of the thing, visualizes a lot; auditory, which hears a lot; kinesthetic, which makes sense of the situation by feeling; olfactory; and the gustatory. So three of them, VAK, are the most commonly found representation systems in the human brain. And one representational system would prevail at any given point of time. Like in my case, I'm very visual, right? I first try to visualize the thing, and then I like to feel the things to make sense out of it, right? So if a person is having a visual representation system, and as a coach, you come to know that he is having, you can best leverage it. Your team member comes to you, say, I think I'm in some maze. And as an intelligent coach would understand, this guy is actually using the visual representational system. So let's talk to him in that language. Say, okay, let's talk about the maze now. What does this maze look like? And then he would be able to connect back to the situation and generate more awareness, which would be helpful for him to find the solution of the problem, or what does he want to discuss at that point of mind, right? Similarly, people may say, okay, I'm thinking my situation is like a dark tunnel where I'm walking and I don't see the light. Okay, let's talk about till you see the light. So that way you can use this representation system. Your brain also comes up with some sort of filters also. So your filters, your representation system together programs what your belief values are. So if a coach is able to understand the beliefs, values, and from there reach out, leverages the representative system of a person, it is very likely that he can help the person, change these beliefs, values, reprogram and retune for the benefit of the client, right? Client or coachee is the same thing in the context, and it could be, he could, as I said, it could be anybody, your team member, whosoever you're coaching. And when we are talking about brain, it is important to understand how the brain functions. What are the different areas of the brain, and what are the various capabilities of the brain that you can leverage by asking the right questions? Like in this case here, this is the front side of the brain, which envision the future, which imagine different kind of options and the possibilities. Here you can ask the question: what do you think? What you could be as a developer or as a tester in next 1 year? Or let's say you have become a test lead. What do you think? What you've done so differently? Push the people to their imagination. Right? That way it will be revising this part of the brain. And then there's a right front part of the brain which create the connections with your values, beliefs, intuitions. You can ask the question: what is making you believe this thing? When you are working in the silos, what value you're exercising, you're exploring the values and beliefs, and this brain would do that part. This side of the brain, which is the right back side of the brain, does senses the feeling. When you are in conversation, people are actually sometimes become emotional, and they have some sort of expression in there. Some, either they are happy, they are laughing, or they become sad, or they start crying. Like the crying, when the crying starts, is time basically to step back. And then in other situations, you can always ask, okay, you are looking now sad, what happened to you? And say, okay, I'm as I seen in my coaching conversation, say I am trying to connect with my earlier experience and how bad the situation was. I'm just thinking that if it repeats here also, it is going to be right. So they are actually connecting with what happened with them and what best they could do. I'm feeling happy. I'm feeling happy because I'm feeling lighter after this conversation, having explored what best I could do. Right. So this side of the brain could be explored to have explore the feelings. And the bottom, the backside of the brain, it actually stores the process information. So asking the questions like, how can you, whatever you have learned or whatever awareness you have, how you can turn into your plan and commitments? What could be your timelines? How can you stay committed? Right, those kind of questions can come here. And then left back side of the brain could is actually responsible for the accountability part. This is where the brain would store your definitions, your names of the people who matters to you. So you can always ask them that, what are you going to stay accountable for the plan and the commitments that you made? And and the answer would come from here. And finally, this left hand side of the brain could be used for logical conclusion. Logical conclusion as in, uh, what is your takeaway from this meeting? Okay, from this session, or you have explored already many options and possibilities, you have come up with a plan. What does weigh more to you? What do you think is more important? Those kind of questions, the answer would come from this part of it, right? And when we are talking about the questions all around the brain, the questions have to be powerful, right? Questions that can bring maximum benefit to your coachee or the client, right? Or your team members, whosoever you're coaching, right? Because that would generate the insight. See this bulb here, insight in the brain of the person, and he'll be able to do more work for himself to find the right answers. As I said in the beginning of the coaching assumes that the person is whole, he's resourceful, he's creative. By sheer, sheerly by that belief, we go by asking the questions here. And what makes the questions so powerful? When you challenge the coach's assumption, a team member of yours comes up to say, I think I'm stuck. I think I'll not be able to do it because I'm incapable, or this is not my job. Don't take his words as it is. Challenge him. What do you think? What is stuck for you? Why do you think you think that you are incapable? Maybe he has just put the word in front of his mind, which is doesn't have to do anything with his reality. So when you challenge that, right, he'll go back and look back on his assumptions. Evoke discovery for something new. People will come up with their stories, which they have been cooking in their mind always. But then coaching is not about listening their story. Coaching is about taking them to the new discoveries, taking them beyond, asking, hey, uh, whatever you are, that's fine. But then let's see, after 3 years, you become something. What do you think how you become something? And how you can position yourself better uh, in this and that way where you're working, right? So it's about, making them discover the areas which they are not able to discover. Dancing in the moment. Don't go with a preconceived question in your coaching conversation. I will ask these questions to the person. Not really. Focus on the moment. See what kind of awareness that person is generating, and then ask the question then and there. That will make more sense. That will make the person connect to his situations well. Open-ended question. Never ask open-ended questions. I think you are talking about this situation. This situation. The person is left just to answer yes or no. No, we really don't want to put him in a situation where he has to answer yes or no. We really want him to explore all the options. What do you think what you could do in this situation could be the right answer in that case, right? Reframe the perspective. Person might be inclined to think in a single way. I remember working with a coachee who was trying to figure out, two colleges, one where he wanted to go, another which he was thinking I can go. And when he was talking his first choice, he made a lot of appreciations about the second college also. And he was probably not aware about it. So I took a moment to say, man, when you're talking about uh, this college, I would like to share with you that you taught a lot of things about the second college also, which is very interesting. What do you think? I change his perspective. I try to reframe his perspective there so that he can make the right choices. Coach-centric curiosity, right? Your question should be client-centric, right? Coachee-centric, not uh, centric to my own interest, right? I don't want to get interested in the coach's story just because I have to go and report it to some news channel as a breaking news or publish it somewhere. I want to ask the questions so that the client becomes interested in his own story. What do you think you are doing? Why are you saying this word? What does it mean to you? Right? Our focus is this person is actually connecting his dot in a panorama and finding his own story. But then our focus is on the question. Then comes clear questions. Don't ask multi-layered questions. Just ask the questions one at a time, which and then pause so that the person can think. That's how the brain works. If you just bombard him with many questions, then he may not probably make sense. I have done this mistake many times, and I have learned it that one clear question at one time makes a lot of sense. Support the coaching thing flowing in a positive direction. People have a lot of negative experiences, past experiences. They would like to talk, but then you are not there to listen that, right? You deliberately make attempt that they don't talk much about the past, the bad things. They look forward and explore what best they could do. And these all things form, powerful questions. So this is one book which I read and I was very impressed. I would suggest you guys also to go and read, right, and make maximum benefit of it. It's about developing the coaching habit with right mindset and powerful questions. When you are having the powerful questions, you may end up in a situation where a person is not responding at all. You say, I don't know. And that's a very tricky situation. Now, as a coach, you may leave that person there. Okay, I think it is not going to happen. The person doesn't have answer, but then it's not right. The person has the answer. It's just that stuck in his brain. The person has stuck in the situation. He just need to be taken out of that. And how that can happen? It can happen when you ask some questions in a different way, right? Again, a part and parcel of the powerful questions again, but then the situation is different here. You can ask him, I agree that you don't know anything about your situation at this. You don't have the answer of the question that I asked. But then if you knew, what would have been the answer? Right? So that way he will connect with his unconscious mind and he'll say, oh, if I knew, probably I would have done this thing. This is one way of tricking uh, so that people can connect back their unconscious mind. There's a lot of information, unprocessed information, which they can recall and think what best they can do in this situation. And if that doesn't work, it may be that the person are simply getting bogged down by uh, their thoughts. They think that coach is probably asking for a lot of big plan and big idea, which I don't know. I'll take some time. That is the time when the coach could ease out the situation, asking, okay, forget about the big plan. Just think about a small step. Think about anything that is very simple, anything that you can think of. The person will come up, okay, I think this is the simple thing I can do. And that's the start of the conversation. Then you take it to the next step, and you can build upon that. And sometime, you know, they may not have the answer even for that. Then you can ask them, okay, you have worked in the other projects. I remember there's a good feedback. What are your learnings from there that you can use here? The person may open up and say, okay, let me think about whatever. Or sometime even that is not working, you can, asking your topic that you discussed in this session. Is it important to you? What makes it so important to you, right? So he'll think the importance of why you're discussing this topic and probably try to explore something. If nothing works, then in that case is the time to focus away, move away from the conversation, talk something else, and then come back by posing the same question in a different way. Maybe this time the person opens up, is able to connect the dot and move forward. So there's a likelihood. And in my case, when I tried out this thing, mostly it worked. There were situations. Okay. So we will have the questions at the end of the session. Okay. So I'd like to complete this and we can talk about the questions in the end. Finally, coming to the mindset part. Okay. As I said, mindset is a big deal. There's a lot of things that can be done, but then from the coaching stance perspective, uh, there are certain things that we as a coach should exercise, and that can really be a game changer. There's a quote by Brian Tracy, who's a motivational speaker, who says that guide your thoughts carefully. The quality of your thinking determines the quality of your life, right? It's very important what kind of thoughts are emerging, because that leads to build a mindset for you. How many times you see people in your projects, in the blame frame of mind, which is very problem oriented, saying why I am into all the time in this problem. What's wrong with me? What's wrong with the situation? How long this problem will be? I don't think there's an option ahead. Nothing could be done about it, right? What does this problem stop me from doing what I want to do? Whose fault it is? When was I last? So they are just trying to find the fault. They think that there's nothing which could be done about it, right? So that is the blame frame of the mind. As a coach, skilled coach, you want to change the perspective, right? You ask the person to put the right question to the situation, right? Which is more future or resources oriented. what we call the out from frame of the mind. Okay, let's put this questions in the right way, in a different way. The situation remains same. Then the questions that they may probably ask themselves is, what do I want? When do I want it? What will I know that I have it, right? And what best I could do, what resources I can leverage, how can I optimally utilize these resources, whether it is internally and externally, what I am going to begin doing now so that I get what I want. What is the first step I can do? People have developed the positive mindset and they start assuming that solution of the problem of the situation exists. And there are options available. Okay. And this very thing gives a a good start for them to explore what best they could do it. And finally, when psychological safety, right? Psychological safety is the last topic in the session, but then it is not the least, right? Because this is very foundational in the agile way of working or any way of working, any spectrum of the world, right? Not related to IT and agile. And there's a definition of the wiki which is very nice, and I thought for the purpose of aligning in this session, it's important to read this definition here, which says that psychological safety is being able to show and employ oneself without fear of negative consequences of self-image, status, or career, right? Without worrying about the consequences, can I contribute as a team member or as a scrum master or as a stakeholder or leadership? Right? It applies to the all levels. Why we need because there's a lot of expectation from the team with respect to the being innovative at the work, being confident, being creative, feel empowered, or and do a lot of learnings back to back, learnings which are required for them to learn for the purpose of the project, and learnings which they are having iteration over iterations, right? And that could only happen when they are not worried about what people will think and what consequences it can bring on to you. Low level conflicts, right, are always there. When we talk about the Tuckman model, it looks very rosy, right? In the form when we say forming, storming, norming, and performing. Probably in the norming and performing things are all good, all rosy, but that's not the case. Those conflicts always remain there, unlike what the Tuckman model said. But then these conflicts has to be accepted. Constructive criticism has to have its own place in the agile way of working, right? That's why the psychological safety has to be there. Also, because team can contribute to each other areas. Each other areas, the tester can go to the developer. Can someone please mute it? Jyoti, can you mute please? Okay.
Ajit, yeah,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
can
that's fine.
mute all actually.
Yeah, yeah, I muted. Okay. So that people can go to each other's areas and contribute without being worried. Developer can go to the test and say, okay, I can write some automated scripts for you, and the tester going, okay, I can write the JUnit for you. Also, so that people can co-create the solution. Imagine a situation where UI, UX, DBAs, Java developers, and the mobile developer, everybody is working. But then if there's no safety, people are going to blame each other, right? I've seen this happening. Oh, the DBA hasn't created this field, that's why the problem is coming. Oh, the Java developer didn't send this field, that's why my UI is getting broken, right? So these kind of things won't happen if people say that it's okay to make the mistakes. What matters is the solution, and we are guaranteedly in a safe space. Who can who are responsible for psychological safety? Everyone, right? Scrum masters, leadership, teams, stakeholders, agile coaches. Agile coaches in particular are holds the much bigger scope and the place for psychological safety because they are outside the ring. They are not part of the team, right? They are in fact can have equal discussion with leadership, scrum masters, teams, and they're well placed to do that. How can you, the very important part, how can you bring the psychological safety at workplace? It's not easy. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes its own course, but it is doable. It is doable by doing certain steps, And these are some of the steps which made sense to me, and I learned over the period of time. The first and foremost is building the trust and intimacy. Imagine a safety, just because somebody says you are at a safe place, without trust and intimacy, it may not happen. So developing the intimacy is the first thing, right? People have a lot of stories, lot of stories. You just start with their stories, formal, informal conversation, and you see the you see that intimacy being built in. I remember in one of my coaching conversation, a person was not opening up. I said it's going to end very soon, but then he was wearing some earring. So I asked him like, "What is this earring?" And he said, "Oh, this is related to some religious ceremony, and I wear it because of this. I purchased it from there." And it's the conversation just started, right? So that way you can have you can build the trust and intimacy in the first place, and then take the opportunity to reiterate the safety, right? Your town halls, your leadership, your people will come and say it once and then forget about it, because probably they want to stay reflected as an agile leader or agile setup. But then if you don't reiterate it regularly, the safety is not going to pitch in, right? I In the professional coaching world, whenever we are starting a session, we are always starting with a one quote that you are at a safe place. Feel free to whatever you want to discuss. This has a purpose. This has a purpose because people really feel safe and they connect. Saying makes a lot of sense. I remember in one of the conversation where a person was saying, I want to explore some career options. And he was actually in training, but then he stopped by and said, Ajit, I want to tell you something which is not related to career, but it's related to my professional life and my personal life, sorry, personal life. And because of this personal situation, I'm not sure what career I should be adopting. And that's where he connected the dots, created whole awareness, and he was able to decide, assess his situation correctly, and make some, insight, generate some insights and some actions for himself. Coach right in the moment. Don't wait when you think people are not in the psychological safe space. They need to be coached. Then coach them then and there itself. Coach elephant in the room. Elephant in the room. Everybody understand, right? The thing that exist but nobody's talking about it, people are afraid of talking about it. A very simple situation is when within the agile team, there's uh, a set of junior members, there's a set of senior members. Junior members are always struggling to put their point forward, and senior members are not listening. This is not the way the agile teams work. Everybody has to be participative, everybody has a place. But then as a coach, when you sense the situation, not being direct, at least you can nudge it to say, guys, everybody has to uh, be participated equally. What do you think we can do? Now you're making the team think together. You are addressing, you're coaching the elephant in the room, right? Sometimes working agreement with respect to the behaviors also helps, right? People coming on time, or not being respectful to each other, having difficult conversation. Sometime when you see that the rules are broken, it's okay to have difficult conversation once. Let others be heard. People want to be listened. As is, give the case of these junior resources, right? Now, this is just one example which I've seen. They want to be heard actually, but then are you hearing? If you don't hear, then how do you feel safe at the space? They see like we are just being not heard, and I don't know how our contribution makes a difference here. We've just been taken for granted. Zero in on situation, circumstances at risk. Some elephants are in which are very visible to you, so you can coach them. But then there are many situations which are giving some sense to you that there's something which is happening. But then you have to reach out to those, zero in on those situations, and see like is it posing some sort of psychological risk here which need to be addressed, and have chat with the people who create the risk finally, right? Which is part of your.
Saurabh,
And when
Bangalore,
all this has happened, how would you come to know whether the psychological safe space exists? Has it worked? Has the why, who, and how has worked well for you? That could be. And there's some of the you know prima facie behaviors that you can see in the team, is that they're having open dialogues, they're having relaxed conversations, their tone and vibes are good, they're having genuine desire to help each other, they're sharing the work, there are constructive criticism taking place which are accepted, right? The whole idea is that let's talk to, let's have the conflict, let's criticize each other, but the whole idea is, are we getting better? Are we moving in the direction that we are supposed to. And then people are comfortably co-creating. Okay. So these are some of the things which I thought to cover in compact 30-minute session. Hope this has helped all of you. Now I'll open it for the questions for next 5 minutes to 10 minutes if it goes to that extent. Thank you for your patience. I'm open for the questions now.
Ajit, this is Vijay. On the slide on I don't know stuck, correct?
Yeah.
What did you do if you know?
Yeah.
I think this question is very challenging, correct? They already, usually they will say, I don't know. I already told I don't know. So
yeah.
How to handle that? Yeah.
No, it works actually. You have to put the question correctly and with patience actually. Sometimes we pose the questions in hurry. Let them understand what I'm asking is not to give the answer for what they are in the current situation, but let's imagine. It's about fostering their imagination, and that too particularly when you figure out that the person is having that visual representation system. Okay, let's imagine that then what would you do? Sometimes people will open, okay, if I knew, then I would do this. So you're giving them a comfort zone actually. That you don't know, but then if you knew, what would you do? It may work in that way. It's a NLP.
Thank you.
It's a NLP trick actually. Neuro language
Okay.
programming, one spectrum of the coaching that works very well, right? Any other questions?
Of course, there is no set of powerful questions available, but based on your experience, like when your situation came and you asked a very good question, like a case study, if you can able to share us, it will be great.
Oh, no, I don't have case study. There's so many case studies I think you can find in the internet, but I would like to tell you that the powerful questions does the wonders. That is my experience. Your ordinary questions, which are actually, leaving people with some options to answer in yes or no, which are not challenging them, their assumptions, which are not moving them forward. These are basically certain required competencies which are essential for asking the question, and that's why we ask them. We label them as a powerful question. Imagine if you're not challenging a person. Okay, you said you are incapable, so that means we are assuming that is incapable, and our conversation will start in that direction, which is not really the case. We really want to make him think, what does it mean to be incapable for you? And if you are very confident about it, if you can explore yes, then we will go it. So these powerful questions are actually powerful because they move the client forward and have them understand their patterns first before they can find the solution.
Okay, thanks, Ajit.
Welcome. Anyone else?
So Ajit, just to compliment, yeah, I've seen your YouTube videos. Definitely, it was very useful, and I think you are a very good presenter. Just to compliment, yeah, thanks for the session. It was interesting.
Thank you, Vijay. Thanks for your words. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming in. Thank you, guys. If nobody has the questions, we can drop in. If you have questions.
Thanks, Ajit. Just that, how will the recording be shared?
I have the recording. I can share it, post it there itself in the meetup. You're fine?
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thanks for your time. Hope it helped. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Ajit. See you.
Bye-bye.